Y'all know the DNA came back here. Y'all know that's my son, baby. Stop playing. We ain't gonna tell y'all. Y'all just keep guessing.
He said stop playing with him, okay?
If that shit would have came back negative, we would have been like, that ain't all, baby. Oh, shit. For duty. And...
You should have known.
She been off duty and she ain't told me nothing. Right. I never in my life watched Love and Hip Hop, y'all. Just so y'all know, people, real TV people from back in the day, we were bitter about.
They thought Karlissa would whisper. They thought she'd hint. They thought she'd dance around the truth the way everybody else does when the internet starts breathing down their neck. Instead, she went straight for the jugular. Because when Blueface's mom opened her mouth about Junior's new DNA test results, she didn't just drop tea. She knocked the entire table over and set the curtains on fire. And if that wasn't enough, she casually dragged Hazel E's age into the conversation like it was a side dish nobody asked for, but everybody immediately started arguing about. 1. Topic was explosive. 2. Together, that's not drama. That's a controlled detonation. This makes the Kardashians look like they settle disputes with group hugs because Karlissa didn't just speak. She unloaded, and the way she said it made people rewind, screenshot, and replay like their Wi-Fi depended on it. DNA results, family loyalty, question timelines, and an age controversy that sent social media into full investigative mode like the FBI just opened a Reddit account. This wasn't a slip. This wasn't accidental. This was intentional chaos, served with confidence, and once those words hit the internet, there was no putting them back. Karlissa didn't wake up that day planning to be polite. You could hear it in her voice before she even got to the point. This wasn't someone reacting emotionally in the moment. This was someone who had reached a conclusion, organized her thoughts, and decided the internet was finally going to hear them whether it was ready or not. When she started talking about Junior's DNA test results, there was no hesitation, no soft launch, no let me explain. She went straight in like she'd been holding onto this information and was done carrying it alone. For months, Junior's paternity had floated around social media like unfinished business. Not loud enough to dominate headlines every day, but persistent enough to never disappear. Comment sections turned into amateur courtrooms. Timelines were dissected by people who swear they hate drama, but somehow know everyone's business. And through it all, Karlissa stayed relatively quiet, which only made the speculation louder. Silence always does that, so when she finally spoke, it felt less like gossip and more like a correction. She didn't present it as a rumor. She presented it as clarification. Karlissa said there were new DNA test results, and that single word, new, detonated the conversation instantly. New implies there was an old question. New implies debt existed long enough to require confirmation. New implies someone wasn't satisfied with what people thought they already knew. And Karlissa said it with confidence. Not shaky confidence. Not defensive confidence. Calm, matter-of-fact confidence. The kind that makes listeners assume there are receipts somewhere even if they never see them. In internet culture, certainty is currency. And Karlissa spent it freely. Viewers immediately noticed how deliberate her wording was. She didn't stumble. She didn't over-explain. She didn't get emotional. That alone separated this moment from every other messy family drama livestream people are used to. This didn't feel like a rant. It felt like a statement. The reaction was instant. Screenshots, clips, group chats lighting up like emergency sirens. People started asking why a new DNA test was needed in the first place, who requested it, what changed, and why Karlissa chose now to speak. Timing matters in scandals, and this timing felt intentional. Then she pivoted. Just when viewers thought the conversation would stay focused on Junior's paternity, Karlissa casually brought up Hazel E's age. No dramatic buildup, no warning. Just dropped it into the conversation like it belonged there all along. And the internet collectively froze because that wasn't a random detour. That was a calculated turn. Age isn't just about numbers. In public scandals, age is about timelines. Credibility, context, Karlissa didn't accuse Hazel E of anything outright. She didn't need to. She raised questions, and questions are more powerful than accusations because they invite everyone else to fill in the blanks. Suddenly, fans were pulling old interviews, resurfacing posts, and arguing over dates like they were preparing for a math exam that they didn't study for. Hazel E's age became the new focal point, and whether it was fair or not didn't matter. Once a question is planted, the internet waters it aggressively. What made the situation even messier was how unrelated the topics seemed on the surface. Junior's DNA test and Hazel E's age look like two separate conversations, but in scandal logic, nothing exists in isolation. Viewers quickly realized Karlissa wasn't jumping topics. She was connecting dots. She was framing a larger narrative about truth, timelines, and people not being as transparent as they present themselves. And that's when things escalated. Fans started speculating that the DNA reveal wasn't just about paternity. It was about credibility, about who gets believed and who doesn't, about who controls the narrative when stories collide. Karlissa wasn't just defending her family. She was challenging other people's versions of events. The first wave of reactions was pure shock. Some people applauded Karlissa for finally speaking up, calling her honest and unfiltered. Others accused her of airing family business publicly and dragging unrelated people into the mess. But even the critics admitted one thing: this wasn't accidental. Karlissa knew exactly what she was doing. What stood out most was how unbothered she seemed by the backlash. No immediate damage control, no softening of her stance, no follow-up apology. That silence after speaking was louder than anything else. It suggested she said what she wanted to say and considered the matter settled, even if the internet did and single quotes t. Meanwhile, the speculation around Junior intensified. People debated what the new DNA results meant and whether they contradicted previous claims. Some demanded proof, others argued that family matters shouldn't require public receipts. But once the conversation goes public, privacy stops being an option. Karlissa opened the door, and the internet rushed in. Hazel E's name continued trending alongside the DNA discussion, and the crossover made everything messier. Fans argued about whether it was fair to bring her age into the conversation at all. Others claimed it was relevant context that people had ignored for too long. The debate split audiences into camps, and the tone shifted from curiosity to confrontation. What made this moment different from typical celebrity drama was how grounded Karlissa appeared. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't crying, she wasn't spiraling. She spoke like someone correcting misinformation rather than creating it. And that composure made her words hit harder than any emotional outburst could. By the end of her comments, one thing was clear: Karlissa wasn't trying to win public sympathy. She was trying to control the narrative. And controlling the narrative is the most powerful move anyone can make in a scandal, because now Junior's DNA test wasn't just a rumor. It was a confirmed topic. Hazel E's age wasn't just trivia. It was a point of debate. And Karlissa wasn't just Blueface's mom, reacting emotionally. She was a central figure shaping how this story would be remembered. And that realization changed everything. Because once the internet realizes someone is steering the conversation instead of chasing it, the scrutiny multiplies. People don't just listen anymore. They analyze, they question motives, they look for patterns. And as the dust settled on Karlissa's initial statements, one uncomfortable question lingered in the air. Once Karlissa's words escaped the original conversation and hit the wider internet, the story stopped being personal and became public property. This is the moment every scandal reaches its second life. When context gets stripped, confidence gets amplified, and speculation gets industrialized. Junior's DNA test results and Hazel E's age weren't just topics anymore. They were trending. Keywords fighting for dominance on timelines that thrive on chaos. TikTok moved first. As always, clips of Karlissa speaking were chopped, looped, and overlaid with dramatic sound effects like the internet was scoring a crime documentary. One viral edit labeled her the family historian, while another called her the one who finally said it. The comments were split between applause and outrage, which is the exact balance the algorithm loves most. Neutrality vanished immediately. Memes followed right behind. Karlissa was suddenly portrayed as a courtroom prosecutor holding invisible receipts, while everyone else stood accused without realizing they were on trial. Junior's DNA test became the punchline in jokes about family math, while Hazel E's age sparked sarcastic posts reminding people that timelines don't lie even when people do. It was funny, uncomfortable, and relentless. Twitter, or whatever name it's using this week, turned into a debate stage. Threads popped up dissecting Karlissa's wording like it was a legal document. People argued over what new DNA results really meant. Was there doubt before? Was there a dispute behind the scenes? Or was this simply confirmation being weaponized for clarity? Every interpretation felt plausible, which made the argument endless. Then came the backlash. Critics accused Karlissa of oversharing and dragging private matters into public space. They said family issues should stay offline, conveniently ignoring the fact that celebrity families stopped being private the moment cameras started paying the bills. Others claimed she crossed a line by mentioning Hazel E at all, arguing that age speculation was unnecessary and unfair. But outrage didn't slow the conversation. It fed it. Supporters fired back just as aggressively. They praised Karlissa for saying what others were too careful to touch. They framed her as someone refusing to let narratives spin unchecked. To them, this wasn't mess. It was transparency with teeth. And in an era where silence is often interpreted as guilt, speaking boldly felt refreshing. The celebrity side-eyes started next. No direct callouts, of course. That would be too risky. Instead, we got vague posts about truth, receipts. And people were writing history. Influencers referenced fake timelines and selective honesty without naming names. Podcasts suddenly found the topic fascinating. Former reality stars hinted that family drama is rarely as simple as it looks, especially when money, cameras, and reputation are involved. Hazel E's name staying in the mix made everything more combustible. Age controversies are internet gasoline because they invite crowdsourced investigation. Fans pulled clips from years ago, screenshots from old posts, and interviews where numbers didn't quite line up the way people expected. Whether the speculation was fair didn't matter. Once curiosity turns into a project, it doesn't stop until everyone's exhausted. Meanwhile, Junior's DNA test discussion took on a life of its own. Some people demanded proof, like this was a courtroom and Karlissa was on the stand. Others argued that nobody owed strangers documentation for family matters. That argument died quickly because once you introduce certainty into public conversation, people expect evidence whether it's ethical or not. What made the outrage louder was how Karlissa didn't flinch. No clarifications, no apologies, no. Let me clear this up livestream. She didn't chase the conversation. She let it chase her. That posture alone told the audience she wasn't worried about being misunderstood. And confidence, whether justified or not, always reads as power. The situation began to feel bigger than the original claims. It wasn't just about DNA or age anymore. It was about credibility, about who controls narratives when multiple stories collide, about who gets believed when confidence meets speculation. Karlissa had essentially thrown a match into a room full of unresolved questions, and now everyone was arguing about the fire instead of the spark. Public opinion fractured into camps. One side viewed Karlissa as reckless, saying she escalated things unnecessarily and put multiple people under scrutiny. The other side saw her as calculated and unapologetic, someone who refused to let misinformation sit comfortably. And then there were the spectators, the ones who didn't care who was right as long as the drama kept unfolding. The timing continued to fuel suspicion. People questioned why this information surfaced now instead of earlier, why the DNA results were discussed At this particular moment, why Hazel E's age became relevant suddenly. In scandals, timing is always treated like motive, even when it's coincidental. What no one could deny was that the narrative had shifted permanently. Junior's DNA test wasn't something that could be brushed off anymore. Hazel E's age wasn't just a detail buried in old interviews. These topics were now part of a shared conversation, and shared conversations don't disappear quietly. As the outrage peaked, the internet did what it always does. It moved on emotionally while staying invested intellectually. The volume dropped slightly, but the scrutiny remained. People kept watching, waiting, looking for the next reaction, the next post, the next slip. Because when someone speaks this boldly, audiences assume more is coming, and the biggest question hadn't even been addressed yet. What happens after the internet decides you've said too much? Because scandals don't end when the noise fades. They end when the consequences land. After the internet finished yelling, laughing, arguing, and pretending to log off, the real consequences finally showed up. Because drama doesn't end when the noise dies down. It ends when reputations start shifting in quiet rooms where cameras aren't rolling. And Karlissa's comments did exactly that. They didn't just spark outrage. They rearranged how everyone involved was viewed. Karlissa herself became something she's never really been before. Not just Blueface's outspoken mom, not just a recurring headline. She became a narrative driver, someone who didn't react to chaos, but redirected it. To her supporters, she looked fearless and filtered, a woman tired of half-truths and internet fiction. To her critics, she looked calculated, dragging sensitive topics into public view without caring who got caught in the crossfire either way. She stopped being background noise and became the voice people had to respond to. And that shift mattered, because once someone controls the conversation, everyone else becomes reactive. Suddenly, people associated with the situation grew cautious. Language changed, posts became shorter, comments were disabled, silence became strategic. Nobody wanted to be the next name trending next to words like DNA or timeline. Junior's situation carried the heaviest weight. The DNA discussion didn't just raise questions about paternity, it raised questions about privacy, boundaries, and who gets to speak for whom. Supporters argued that Karlissa was protecting her family. By clarifying facts, critics argued that Junior didn't ask to be a topic of debate. And that tension never resolved, because both sides felt morally correct. What lingered most wasn't proof or denial, it was doubt. And doubt has a long shelf life. Once people start questioning, they rarely stop completely. Every future mention of Junior would now come with side eyes, context, and whispered assumptions. Even if nothing else was ever said again, Hazel E felt the ripple effect differently. The age controversy didn't explode loudly, but it stuck. It attached itself to her name like an asterisk people couldn't ignore. Fans didn't just move on, they archived. Screenshots resurfaced. Old interviews were replayed with new suspicion. Whether fair or not, the conversation reframed her public image into something she hadn't actively chosen. And the cruel part of internet culture is this: you don't have to be guilty of anything to be permanently associated with a question. Once the question exists, it follows you. Hazel E became part of a larger narrative she didn't start, but couldn't escape. Behind the scenes, relationships shifted. Some people distanced themselves quietly, not out of betrayal, but out of self-preservation. Others doubled down on loyalty, publicly showing support while privately recalculating risk. Friendships didn't necessarily end. They changed shape, became quieter, less visible, more careful. What made the aftermath more uncomfortable was the lack of resolution. No definitive proof released, no official statements tying everything into a neat bow. Just fragments, confidence, silence, and speculation filling the gaps. In scandals like this, ambiguity isn't neutral, it's corrosive. It keeps conversations alive longer than facts ever could. The entertainment industry noticed too, not openly, but internally. When family members start shaping narratives instead of reacting to them, power dynamics shift. Karlissa proved she wasn't afraid to disrupt the storyline, and that alone makes people tread lightly around her. In celebrity culture, unpredictability is often treated as influence. Ironically, Karlissa didn't lose relevance from this, she gained it. People tuned in to see what she'd say next, not because they agreed with her, but because they knew she wouldn't soften anything. And in an ecosystem built on polished statements and PR filters, raw certainty stands out, but certainty also comes with consequences. From this point forward, Karlissa's words wouldn't just be opinions. They'd be treated like catalysts. Every future statement would be dissected, questioned, and magnified. She crossed the line from commentator to instigator, and that line doesn't fade easily. The broader impact stretched beyond the individuals involved. This moment reinforced a familiar truth about celebrity culture. Families are no longer private units. They're extensions of the brand, and when brands fracture internally, the public feels entitled to watch the fallout in real time. Viewers didn't just consume this scandal. They learned from it. They watched how confidence shaped perception, how silence amplified suspicion, how timing created motive where none was confirmed. And that awareness changed how future controversies would be received. What unsettled people most was how unfinished everything felt. No apology, no retraction, no clear ending, just a lingering sense that this wasn't the full story. And when the internet believes there's more, patience disappears, people wait, watch, and speculate harder. Karlissa never circled back to soften her stance. She didn't reframe, she didn't clarify. That alone suggested she stood by every word, and standing firm, whether right or wrong, always reads as power in public perception. The final takeaway wasn't about DNA tests or ages. It was about control, about who gets to define truth when multiple narratives collide. Karlissa showed that sometimes the loudest impact doesn't come from screaming. It comes from saying something confidently and refusing to explain it further. And that leaves one final question hanging in the air. If this much chaos came from one conversation, what happens the next time someone decides to say even more? Because in celebrity culture, silence is temporary, but patterns repeat. Someone always speaks again. Another timeline gets questioned. Another truth gets challenged, and every time it happens, the fallout gets bigger. If you made it all the way here, congratulations! You just survived another celebrity scandal without a PR filter, because this wasn't just about DNA tests or age debates. This was about power, timing, and who really controls the narrative when the internet smells blood in the water. Now smash that like button like it owes you child support, because the algorithm needs to know you're here for chaos with context. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Did Karlissa say too much? Or did she finally say what everyone else was scared to touch? Was this truth, strategy, or calculated disruption? I want hot takes, wild theories, and opinions spicy enough to melt the comment section. If you're new here, hit subscribe like you just realized celebrity silence is never accidental. This channel doesn't do surface-level gossip or polite breakdowns. We expose patterns, decode motives, and call out the quiet moves behind loud drama. And trust me, if this story cracked open this easily, there are at least 5 more waiting to spill. Turn on notifications, because scandals don't come with warnings. They drop randomly, explode instantly, and disappear before you've even finished arguing about the last one. Miss an upload and suddenly you're confused, behind, and pretending you don't care while still watching clips. Remember this going forward. The loudest people don't always control the story. The confident ones do. And once confidence meets controversy, the fallout is never clean. Stay watching, stay questioning, stay messy. Because around here, the truth is uncomfortable, the drama is intentional, and the next bombshell is already loading. Fame flaws.